We press on for you because it's our mission. Dedicated to investigation because the facts matter. Fueled with determination because it's our calling. Driven by passion because you deserve to know what's really going on. Please support real journalism.
Hello, I'm Greg Bluestein, one of the political reporters here at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Welcome to the AJC's Mayoral Forum. We are so glad you could join us. Before we begin, we'd like to thank the panelists and the AJC subscribers whose support allows us to hold these events. This debate is part of the AJC's ongoing coverage of the 2021 Atlanta mayor's race and is the latest in a series of community conversations that the AJC holds on topics of importance to the metro region. It's because of our subscriber support that we're able to make these events free and available to everyone. Our reporting and our local journalism is possible because of you, so thank you. Now, there are 14 candidates to become Atlanta's 61st mayor, but the AJC invited to participate the 5 candidates who received at least 1% support in a recent AJC poll of 842 likely voters in the race. Our AJC reporters will ask a series of questions, many of which were submitted by our subscribers, and each candidate will have 1 minute, 30 seconds to respond. After an initial series of 5 questions, each candidate will be asked a specific question that only they will respond to. They'll have 1 minute for each of those responses. We will then use the remainder of our time asking questions to which the entire panel will respond. Throughout the forum, if a candidate directly mentions another by name, that candidate will be allotted 30 seconds to offer a brief rebuttal. It'll be up to me as the moderator to decide. Now, before we begin, I want to acknowledge our reporting. Over the past 8 months, the AJC has dedicated resources across the newsroom to bring you the most complete coverage of a race that will shape the city and the region over the next 4 years. The AJC has conducted a poll to judge likely voters' opinions on the candidates and the most pressing issues facing the city. We've created a roundup column dedicated to presenting all the most important campaign news each week. We've delivered to you a variety of breaking news about the race, everything from Mayor Bottom's historic decision to not seek a second term to campaign finance reports that delve into who's giving money to the candidates and how they're spending it, along with covering the policies, the announcements, the events that all shape a race of this magnitude. Our coverage of the race for City Hall can be found on ajc.com, in your inbox, and in the printed edition. Now, questioning the candidates today are the AJC's 2 City Hall experts, J.D. Capelouto and Wilborn III. I'll be moderating the discussion and acting as official timekeeper. JD, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Greg. Now I want to welcome and introduce the candidates. We have with us today, in alphabetical order, Atlanta City Councilman Antonio Brown, Atlanta City Council Member Andre Dickens, Attorney Sharon Gay, Atlanta City Council President Felicia Moore, and former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed. Thank you all so much for joining us. And today, Wilborn and I, thank you. Wilborn and I will alternate in asking questions today. The candidates will answer in a round robin format and will rotate alphabetically in who answers first. And many of our questions have been adapted from submissions from our subscribers. And we'll be asking about the major issues facing the city, from crime to affordable housing to the coronavirus. And I'll turn it over to Wilborn for the first question of the night.
Thanks, JD. Well, folks, the first question of the night has to do with the issue that is top of mind for most voters in the city, crime. 44% of respondents in our AJC poll said crime is the city's most pressing issue. So starting with Councilman Brown, what would you do in your first 100 days as mayor to reduce gun violence? And what will you do in the long term to ensure that the trust is enhanced between the community and the police?
Thank you so much to the AJC. Thank you to both of you, as well as to Greg Bluestein for moderating this conversation. I would start by saying within my first 100 days as mayor of Atlanta, I will enact the Department of Public Safety and Wellness, which was already unanimously passed through City Council. I would ensure that we had a 24-hour non-emergency response unit that would focus on quality of life issues, as well as addressing our unsheltered population. within the mental health and substance abuse areas. I would also focus on really adapting and mandating a community policing policy within the standard operating procedures of the Atlanta Police. I think this is incredibly important. I enacted one of the first community policing units off of MLK and Lowry. We were able to reduce crime by over 57%. And I want to be able to continue that work and make sure that it's within the budget. Also, I would like to try something that I've seen done in St. Louis that's had a lot of great results, which is a conflict resolution center that would focus around non-emergency issues before they really become more egregious issues. And St. Louis has seen some great results in reducing violent crime and disputes. A lot of the violent crime we see happening in the city is peer-to-peer disputes. And if we can get them in a room to be able to work out their disagreements through this conflict resolution center, I think we could see some great reward on that.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilman Dickens, you're next.
On mute. Thank you, AJC, and to all your readers and everyone for being here today. It's an honor and a privilege for me to have this opportunity. What I do in the first 100 days is the chief and I will establish a 100-day contract to reduce violent crime. The chief will be on a clock, and every day we will make strides towards that. And that is a part of the contract to be able to say, Chief, this is where we want to be, and we have to reduce violent crime by this rate within 100 days. We will also partner with APS's PD to be able to do gang intervention and gang prevention in schools immediately on the first day that I'm sworn in, because gangs are a problem right now, and some of that is festering and starting in our school system. And then also to quickly, within the first 100 days, quickly hire 75 to 100 officers aggressively from other jurisdictions as fast as we can. Now, going to the long-term plans, as we talked about, as you asked about, I have my Safe Streets Atlanta plan, which is a balanced approach to safety and justice. It's a way to be smart on crime. The S is to hire 250 officers in the first year, getting to 400 officers by the second year, and to train those officers in racial sensitivity and de-escalation techniques, and to do 21st century policing. The A is to arrest those gang leaders that I mentioned earlier that are preying on our children. The F is to have a strike force, a task force with the GBI, the FBI, the ATF, and DEA to address gun trafficking while hiring.
Thank you, Councilman.
Ms. Gay, same question.
Yes, thank you also to AJC and everyone who's joining tonight. In the first 100 days, I would focus on problem properties, properties where people are not following the alcohol code, not following other city ordinances. You know, our neighborhoods and our community improvement districts know what these properties are. And we'd have the laws in place to really make a difference if we are very clear with the police department and the law department and the mayor's office about what needs to be done, and then, you know, hold those properties accountable, because that's where a lot of the problems are forming, where people are just gathering in ways that are not constructive to the rest of us who follow the laws and to the properties that are following the law. So I would focus on 100 properties in those first 100 days. I would also quickly move to restore just morale in the police department, because a lot of our challenge is the police don't feel supported. And I would send a very clear, direct, early signal that I have their back, that I'll follow the laws, I'll follow procedures, and I want to help bring the 21st century training that the police officers need in order to conduct crime fighting and crime prevention in a 21st century way, which would also quickly involve what would be part of our long-term strategy, which is getting the police back out into the neighborhoods, reconnecting our police with the communities they serve. You know, they ought to know the owner of the corner store, the pastor down the street, the school principal, and know the kids, so that you can help stop crime before it forms.
Thank you, Ms. Gay.
Council President Moore, same question.
You're on mute, ma'am.
Sorry, in the first 100 days, first and foremost, I'm going to work to boost the morale of our police officers, making sure that I get in front of all of them. I'm going to attend the roll call of all of our officers so that they can have an open line of communications with the mayor beyond my coming to the roll call, I will open a line of communications. I'm also going to get good leadership for the departments that they respect and trust, and that we can help move the city forward, getting more officers on the street immediately by incentivizing our retired officers, particularly those that recently have left the force, to come back on a contract for a year or two so that they can help getting the officers that are behind the desk to spend one shift out in the community, helping to back up our patrol officers so they can patrol. And then I'm going to have a series of community conversations, and I think real conversations in the community, particularly where there have been frayed relationships between our police officers and the community. We need to start having an open dialogue and then begin to work on how we can get things resolved. That means also talking to those in our activist community who have spoke up and spoke out about police reforms and their need, and making sure that we're addressing those issues. So we're going to do a lot of things in the first 100 days, but first and foremost, we're going to get that police presence up on the street, and we're also going to engage with our court system to see what we can do to help on the city side, like keeping our city jail open so that we are not pressing our judges.
Thank you, Council President.
To let them out. Thank you.
Mr. Reed, same question.
Well, I'm going to start by announcing a search for a new police chief. Chief Bryant was kind enough to come out of retirement, but I believe we need a long-term leader. I'm also going to wake up every single day and go to our roll call and our shift changes and look our police officers, the women and men of our force, in the eye and let them know that they will always have due process during the course of my mayoralty. I'm going to reach out to the chief of MARTA and to the Fulton County Sheriff, Patrick Labatt, and Chief Crayer, both men I know well and have worked with before. And we're going to have a coordinated effort to have a surge against crime and violence that really runs across those three departments. And we're also going to dip into the $200 million in reserve that I left when I was mayor in 2018. And we're going to run police overtime, literally on a nonstop basis. Even if that means spending deeply into that reserve. Whatever we need to do to push back against this surge of crime and violence, we need to do. We're going to grow the officers from 1,340 where it is today, where it has shrunk to today. We're going to grow that force back to 2,000 police officers. And I believe that it's appropriate to hire retired officers as well to come and join our effort. But the biggest thing we're going to do is lead and work at it every single day. It's going to be the #1 priority of our administration, and we'll begin to see a turn in crime and violence in 180 days.
Thank you all. The next question is an auxiliary issue related to crime, and that's the Buckhead cityhood movement. So our recent AJC poll found that a majority of Atlanta voters oppose the cityhood movement, but a majority of respondents who are living in Buckhead area zip codes were in favor of it. So Louise North wants to know, what would you do to convince both state legislators and Buckhead residents, who are the only people in the city that would vote on this issue, that remaining part of the city is in their best interest? And we'll go to Councilman Dickens first.
Yeah, as someone who has lived in Buckhead, who has lived in Northwest Atlanta, Southwest Atlanta, and Midtown, I understand the challenges across the entire city. And what's happening in Buckhead is that Buckhead wants to feel safe, and they want to feel heard and appreciated and valued and have access to their mayor. Well, that's the same thing that all other communities across the city of Atlanta wants as well. And so with my Safe Streets Atlanta plan, with my commitment to being a very hands-on mayor as it relates to crime and public service delivery and making sure that we run the government ethically and with integrity, I believe that Buckhead, just like the rest of the city, will see a change and a part of the culture that they will want to stay a part of. As mayor, you are mayor of the entire city, and Buckhead is a part of our family. We want to make sure they feel a part of it and stay in the city of Atlanta. We will make sure that we provide such good service and police protection that they will want to stay, and they will see that Atlanta as a whole together. And so the city of Atlanta will operate better when you have a mayor that's going to be very hands-on, again, attending all of the community meetings, the town hall meetings, as I do today as an at-large council member. They will not want to leave the city of Atlanta because they will see a mayor and a government that works well and it works for everyone across the entire city, including Buckhead.
Thank you. Ms. Gay.
Well, the first thing I say is that I hear you. Your concerns are valid. You deserve to be taken seriously. You have absolutely valid, serious concerns, not only about crime, but about sort of the way too much top-down decision-making is made in the city that is not respectful of all of our neighborhoods. And so what I would encourage the residents of Buckhead City, proposed Buckhead City, to focus on is electing new leadership this year and holding those new leaders accountable for the change you seek. And that if I'm elected mayor, I will show up, I will do the work, I will listen, and I would ask that you give us 200 days maybe to turn around crime, to clean up corruption, to improve the delivery of city services, and to make the government something you feel confident of being and comfortable being a part of, because Buckhead is a part of the city and we're all better together when we are united. And that I would urge them to give me a chance to do that.
Thank you. Council President Moore.
Well, I would certainly say that I hear them as well. And I have worked with them and for them as a council member for District 9, the only district that actually represents from Buckhead to, as they used to say, Bankhead, but it's now Donald Lee Hollowell Parkway. So I've represented them and I know them well. And the things that they're asking for are the same things that people are asking for across this city. People want to feel safe in their neighborhoods and their community when they're pumping gas or going to the grocery store. People want city services that they're paying for. And people want an ethical, honest, and accountable government. And those are the things that I will be working day one, right after election, not even day one in transition, to deliver for them. And I will talk with them. I will have conversations with them. And I will also be at the state legislature trying to seek to stop the movement. And if that is not successful for many reasons, and we get to November 2022 and they are so afforded the opportunity to vote to leave, I believe once they see that they have great, effective, trustworthy leadership, that they will choose a majority of them to stay a part of what they are a part of now, this great city of Atlanta.
Former Mayor Reed.
First thing that I would do would be to sit down and listen. It's my understanding that the Buckhead community has made more than 12 requests for ongoing meetings with our mayor, and that hasn't happened. So I don't want to blame anyone, but they haven't been able to have conversations. So I would do a series of meetings really to listen to their frustration and their anger, and then I would deal with it and remind them that when I was mayor, the city had the lowest level of crime and violence in 40 years, that we built the police force to the biggest that it had been in history, that 6 out of 8 years we hired more than 200 police officers during those years, and that they have a lived experience with my administration. They were safer 4 years ago than they are at this moment. And we're going to build a best-in-class police force with a first-rate chief, and we're going to push back against crime and violence. The good thing is that we've got about a 1-year runway before the 2022 referendum date. And the biggest thing that you can do for Buckhead is to reduce crime and violence in the city of Atlanta. With regard to the Georgia General Assembly, I have a long track record of working in a bipartisan way with former Governor Deal. I spent more than 10 years as a member of the state Senate, and as a state rep, I served with Governor Kemp, and I believe that those relationships will travel a long way towards giving Atlanta the opportunity to show that what is happening in crime and violence is a moment in time and not a permanent changing condition.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Brown.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm having some internet technical difficulties, so my apologies in advance. I would just say to Buckhead, I mean, a lot of what has already been said, I believe what they are asking for is no different from someone living in Bankhead or Buckhead. The reality is that we all want to feel safe in our communities. You know, we all want our roads fixed and to ensure that there is a transparent government where we can see where our money is going and being spent on and how we address the needs of this city. The other thing is that, you know, I believe that Buckhead is not the only community that has experienced this feeling of not being heard. And we need to remind them that we do hear them and that we do understand that their concerns. And I would bring forth a plan to show them how we are not going to continue to Band-Aid public safety in the city of Atlanta. So the moment that our communities living in generational poverty go unaddressed again and again, as it has for decades in this city, crime doesn't spill over into their communities like it has now. And I will show them that plan by enacting community policing, showing them alternative measures of being able to address some of these socioeconomic conditions that have contributed to what has been, what they have experienced in Buckhead through this period of time. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, candidates. This next question comes from H. Hanley, who wants to know, what is one thing that the current mayor has done that you would have done differently? And we'll start with Ms. Gay.
I think it's with regard to public access of City Hall during the pandemic. I appreciate what she's done to keep our city safe and to be, you know, insistent upon following public health guidelines, but with regard to individual activities. But as someone who had to manage an office, manage the Atlanta office of a global law firm, I had to pivot immediately to turn my entire office in 4 days from everybody in the office to everybody working remotely. But we had to continue to provide services to our clients through all of that time. And so we've constantly updated our procedures and constantly pivoted and changed and adapted and to respond to the science, which has been changing, and the learned information about the pandemic, while providing the services that we're, you know, obligated to provide to our clients. I think we could have done more to open City Hall much sooner. Well, it's not even open yet. Do what other local governments have done, is to be much more intentional about opening City Hall in a safe manner, in a way that protects the employees, but gives our citizens access to our city government. That you know, when I qualified to run for office, that was the first time I'd been in City Hall in 15 months, and I'm not allowed back in today. And I think that's a mistake. I think it has made governing harder. I think it's made the city council's job harder. And it has certainly made people's access to their government much more challenging. And I would have taken a different approach.
Thank you, Ms. Gay. Madam President, same question.
Yes, my administration, one of the things I'm going to really take to heart is communication. Making sure that we keep an open line of communications with the community at all times. We have a lot of critical issues and needs before us, and it's going to be extremely important for people to see their mayor, hear from their mayor, and understand where we are, where we're going, and what is being done. And so there will be critical points of communication, not only with me and the public, but me with the council, which I have been a member of, and know how not having information as a council member really hurts you as in the governing body. I'm going to be having different open degrees of communication with the council, with the community, with all of our stakeholders. And I believe communications is the key, and that will be something my administration will certainly be leaning very heavily into.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Reed.
I believe that we should have not closed the jail in the midst of a global pandemic, with people flocking to Atlanta because our city was open relative to others. And I think by extension, we should have gotten a deal done with Sheriff Patrick Labatt's government, so that people are treated in a humane fashion. We have more than 1,100 beds that are going unutilized. And I think that we should get a deal to make sure that people are treated in a humane way. So I would reopen the jail. I would get an agreement with Sheriff Labatt's department. I would start housing prisoners there. I would also send a clear signal to criminals that we have a jail to place you in. I think closing the jail sent the wrong message to criminals and repeat offenders. And so they know that we don't have a jail that's open. So even when our officers catch individuals, they're almost released immediately to commit more crime and violence in our city. And I think that was an unfortunate result.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Councilman Brown, same question.
President Moore, you need to mute your phone, but could you repeat the question again, please?
Yes, sir. So Reader H. Hanley wants to know, what is one thing that the current mayor has done that you would have done differently as mayor?
There's a lot of things I would have done differently as mayor of Atlanta. There are some things, though, that I do agree with her on, and I personally believe in closing the jail, just to have that on the record. But I would speak to the fact that just the line of communication between city council and the mayor's administration and the executive offices, it has been very poor. And it has been very adversarial, to say the least. And I would work to rebuild that relationship and really be a bridge. My administration would work hand in hand with the Atlanta City Council in addressing some of the most complex issues that we're going to be facing after this election. I think it's incredibly important that we truly form a partnership where we can work together, where we can work on legislation together and programmatic initiatives together, including the budget process. I would discontinue this process where the mayor does the budget first and then passes it along to council. We would work together to build the budget. So these are just some of the things in which I would do differently under my administration.
Thank you, sir. And Councilman Dickens.
Yeah, so first I'll start off with some glass half full things. I mean, Mayor Bottoms did do a lot to help us with COVID safety and really getting the public aware of some of the things that need to be able to keep us safe and help our youth and our communities. A number of other things related to the LGBTQ community and so on and so forth. So there are some positives, but I'll just say this specific thing. I would have a whole lot more meetings than Mayor Bottoms has. I will be in 30-minute meetings, 15-minute meetings, 1-hour meetings, morning meetings, 6, 7 a.m. roll calls at the police stations. I'll be at 8, 9 o'clock night meetings, et cetera. It will just be an extremely more active set of meetings to gain more information and to give more vision and to give more charge to the employees. I'm an engineer, so to optimize the system, you have to continue to monitor the system. So you have to be active and expressive up front about what the expectations are, and then do routine check-ins constantly over and over again. That means meeting with all the council members. That means meeting with Buckhead. That means meeting with Midtown. That means meeting with Southwest Atlanta. I think that's how we would have built more affordable housing on our AHA properties. When you meet, you hear things, people tell you things, nonprofit developers will wave their hands and say, I'm ready to go. So I think we could have hit more targets that she actually wanted if there was a level of, I know during COVID things slowed down, but they did not have to slow down. So I would be extremely active and energetic about meetings and getting things done.
Thank you. After crime, people responding to the AJC poll said affordable housing was the second most pressing issue facing the city. Question is, as mayor, how would you promote growth and economic development while also ensuring that living in Atlanta remains affordable so that people aren't priced out of their neighborhoods? And Council President Moore, you're up first.
I would have to ask you to repeat the question. I was having technical difficulties and I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, no problem. The question was, as mayor, how would you promote growth and economic development while ensuring that housing and living in Atlanta remains affordable so that people aren't priced out of their neighborhoods?
So first of all, we know housing affordability and affordable housing is a huge issue in our city of Atlanta. First, we need to make sure that we're preserving it where it exists today and that is stabilizing communities, helping seniors and other homeowners to repair their homes, to be able to stay there. I would also like us to look at increasing our exemption for legacy residents, maybe if they've lived in their home for 10 or 15 years, so that we can help them with their tax burden. But also we'll have to reach out to the school system, which is about 56 cents on every dollar, and Fulton County to get them to do the same to really have a great impact. Then we also need to create affordable housing units in our community. And we have city-owned property, land authority property, and that AHA property that has been in, for instance, the district I represented, District 9, Bankhead Courts, Bowen Homes, Hollywood Courts, and just are nice, beautiful green spaces that we can build densely and build affordable housing where our city employees can work there, workforce housing, and even help some of our unsheltered population with that. And then with our workforce agency, we can work on getting those jobs that people need so that they can get a great income, be able to afford housing at market. There are many things we can do, also looking at the incentives we give out and making sure that we are giving those incentives to an increased amount of affordability that they can. Thank you.
Mr. Reed, same question to you.
As we sit on this call tonight, we have 877 acres that Atlanta owns directly that aren't being developed right now. And the world is awash in global capital that wants to make solid investments. So what I will do is I will utilize that property to have for-profit and not-for-profit NGOs do vertical construction in rapid fashion. I use the powers of the Office of Mayor to zone that property so we really move the hurdles out of the way. And we will get started with vertical construction right away. And we will also have a scattered site housing approach where we allow people who are living in public housing right now to actually buy that property. So if you've been paying rent for 10 or 12 or 14 or 15 years, you ought to be able to convert that to a mortgage and build genuine wealth. When I served as the 59th mayor, I had the privilege of initiating an effort called the West Side Future Fund, which I think is a very powerful model to show how you can raise private sector dollars to offset rising property tax costs that are hurting so many people in the city. I think that we should absolutely expand that model, and I will do so if I am fortunate enough to be elected mayor. But you can fit Boston, Manhattan, and San Francisco in the 131.5 miles that is the city. So there's no excuse not to have a place in Atlanta for everyone.
Thank you, Councilman Brown.
Yeah, I would start first by really establishing the Office of Housing and Community Development as a separate entity within, right now it sits within the Department of Planning. I would remove it from the Department of Planning, make it a separate entity, and reestablish the Chief Housing Officer role that would be budgeted through the city of Atlanta and not through philanthropic dollars. In addition to that, I would look to expanding our housing opportunity bond. We just recently passed $100 million. I would follow the mayor's commitment of increasing that to $150 million. And with that, within that $150 million, I would make sure that 30% was allocated towards a fund to fight against displacement and really working to address preventative measures of displacement. I would also work with establishing a fund with AVLF. Right now, the fund currently supports preventative measures, but it's very limited and only serving a certain population of the city. I would expand that to help prevent homelessness and the unsheltered population. I would conduct an auction on the 758 acres of vacant city land. I was the council member that authored the legislation to call for that action on city council, and we would conduct an auction to level the playing fields so residents could have opportunity to acquire land in the city of Atlanta.
Thank you. Councilman Dickens, you're up next.
Yeah, working people can't afford to live in the city of Atlanta anymore. Since 2010, 50% increase in housing costs, while there's only been a 10% increase in people's salaries in the working class. This means that folks are cost burdened. They're spending more than 30%, some more than 50% of their salaries on housing. This is why you must build or preserve 20,000 units of affordable housing in 8 years. I will appoint a chief housing officer that knows construction and how to preserve affordable housing. This is because I've been the most vocal and legislative leader on city council about affordable housing over the past 8 years and passed so many policies that's moving us forward. But we must build on all of this vacant land at Atlanta Housing Authority that I've seen growing up. Bowen Homes, Bankhead Courts, Hollywood Courts, Inglewood, North Avenue, plenty of land to build on. It's a shame that no leader has built on it already. And so we must work with nonprofit developers and CHODOs, which are housing development organizations, community housing development organizations. But then we have to stabilize the existing folks by freezing their property taxes for seniors and also expanding community land trusts. I will have a dedicated revenue stream that comes into the city for affordable housing. We actually just issued legislation today with Matt Westmoreland and a team of council members to be able to do that, to have about $10 to $12 million set aside annually in our budget just for affordable housing. We must make sure that people can age in place and go lower in our AMI.
Thank you, Councilman.
Ms. Gay, same question to you.
The fundamental issue facing Atlanta is how do we grow in a sustainable, equitable fashion? And part of the challenge is affordability, and part of the challenge is income and job. And what I've done for the last 25 years of my career is actually work on the side of producing affordable and mixed income housing and creating new places for people to live and work and develop jobs and businesses. So I would bring that knowledge to bear, first of all, to figure out how we build more housing, because we do need more housing. Really at all price points, but the bigger our supply, the more opportunities there are for people to find decent, safe housing in places they want to live that they can afford. We've got thousands, in addition to the city land that has been mentioned before, particularly the Atlanta Housing Authority land, which just astoundingly hasn't been developed in the last 12 years. We've got thousands of acres of private land that is underutilized, that's on our major thoroughfares, our major corridors, near MARTA stations, near transit, and we could develop thousands and thousands of units in that land without really affecting our existing historic neighborhoods. But we also need an economic development plan. The city doesn't have one. We need an economic development plan that figures out how we maximize public investment and work with private sector and nonprofits and businesses to increase the income level of our citizens to have more good paying jobs and to target our economic incentives toward that.
Thank you so much, everyone. So candidates, our next question is designed to help voters distinguish between you all, which is really important because our AJC poll found that 41% of respondents don't know who they want to be as their next mayor. So starting with Mr. Reed, what is one specific plan or policy that you have that none of the other candidates have proposed?
I think the plan to hire 750 police officers. In conversation after conversation, there have been various numbers. Mine is very specific. And I have a detailed plan to do it in partnership with the Atlanta Police Foundation, for recruiting police officers rapidly across the region. And more than a plan, what's important is I said that I would do it before when I was sworn in 2010, and I actually hired 900 police officers. So the number 1, 2, and 3 issue facing Atlanta, the reason that Buckhead is contemplating becoming their own city, is because our police force has shrunk to 1,340 officers. And so we need a leader that has a proven track record of growing the police force and earning the support of the officers so that they know that they will have due process and so that people can go back to living their lives in a safe fashion consistent with our traditions in Atlanta.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Councilman Brown, same question.
Thank you so much. I would say one of the things in which I have listed on my platform that no other candidate is addressing or mentioning is a $250 million workforce development bond, in which Georgia State University is currently studying now. That would be huge for the city of Atlanta and truly become a model that could be replicated across the country. And the program really focuses on career trade opportunities for our residents, with a minimum wage of $20 an hour plus health insurance, and really creating this ecosystem that I've been talking about within my platform that ensures that we create a socioeconomic shift in the economic class system in this city. And I think that is incredibly important and vital for right now, because I believe that what we see in crime, whether violent crime or other, it is a symptom, it is a side effect of the generational poverty that has gone unaddressed in this city for decades. And just in closing, what else I would say that I think is equally important is I'm the only candidate that will close ACDC, and I'm the Atlanta City Detention Center, and I am the only candidate that has publicly stated that I would rescind the lease agreement between the city of Atlanta and the Atlanta Police Foundation around Cop City, with the development of a training facility on the old Atlanta prison farmland.
Thank you, Councilman.
Councilman Dickens, same question.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, sir. What is one specific plan or policy that you have that is different from anything the other candidates have proposed?
Gotcha. Because Atlanta has the highest rate of income immobility and inequality in the country, someone born in poverty only has a 4% chance of making it to the upper middle class. I'm the candidate that wants to change that dramatically in the city of Atlanta. We have a lot of prosperity, but we have a whole lot of poverty. And that's why I'm determined to make sure that we have balanced and broad economic growth geographically to our southwest and southeast parts of town, but demographically for Black and brown people and those that have been kept out of opportunities for far too long. This is why you need a mayor that has created programs like I have that trains people for free on high demand technology skills, where hundreds of people have gotten $60,000 jobs in my program in just 4 months. I will expand my program to be able to reach the entire city of Atlanta, to give youth the opportunity to have summer jobs programs, to be able to train people in nursing. And I will create nursing and logistics and everything else. My folks are working at Accenture, Coca-Cola, Georgia Power. I will create the Atlanta Department of Labor. This is a centralized department for all labor needs with WorkSource Atlanta and getting people jobs. That will help with our affordable housing, that will help with our crime, that will help with every system that we have. Is when people have access to opportunities and incomes and unions being able to work with them, we will change the game and we will no longer be the worst since 2010 and 11, the worst in the country in income immobility. Folks can't get up in Atlanta.
Ms. Gay. Same question.
Well, first of all, what I bring to the table that's different from anyone else is that I've never held office. I've never been in elective office. I'm not a politician. I'm an outsider. I know my way around the inside of city government, but I'm an outsider. And so if you don't like the way things are going or have been going the last few years, I can bring a fresh approach. What I would do that I think addresses some of the things others have talked about, but in a much more comprehensive way, is really having a neighborhood focused strategy in the way we approach solving problems and delivering services in City Hall. I would focus particularly on the neighborhoods that have been left behind for too long, the neighborhoods that are distressed, that need investment, that need leadership, that need help finding their own way to be healthier and have a safer, thriving life for their children. But for all neighborhoods in the city, I actually would like to have the neighborhoods take more responsibility for planning what they need and having the services of the city organized to deliver more what the neighborhoods need rather than one size fits all top down for the whole city government. And there have been several recent examples of that, and I would do that differently.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam President.
Thank you for that question. So one thing that I want to make sure is that everyone in every neighborhood is safe. But I also want to make sure that our citizens feel safe in their interaction with our police. So what I would do differently that I have not heard is work on the culture of policing, and that is taking down this blue wall of silence. I have a good relationship with many officers that I talk to quite frequently, and they know that they're internally issues, but they are fearful of being able to share that. They tell the community, if you see something, say something. Well, we want our officers, if they see something, to say something. So we're going to open up a confidential line where officers can share that information. And we're also going to expand it to looking really, should internal affairs be internal, or should it have an external or independent component, so that the officers feel free of doing that, and we're sure that the people who are investigating complaints are not a part of the culture in the department. So those are the things that I'd like to see done differently, and also look at our activist community. I want to sit down with them and get them with our police officers so that we can talk about how we engage each other when we're having protests, demonstrations, acts of civil disobedience on our streets, because it's been inconsistent, and I've seen them, I've watched them. We need to make sure that we all understand that this is the home of Dr. Martin Luther King, and demonstrations and protests are great, but we are not going to destroy
Thank you,
property.
Council
We're
President.
not going to harm each other. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Now we're going to turn to ask a series of questions to individual candidates. And the candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond, and we're going to go in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with Councilman Brown. And you have been indicted by the federal government on fraud charges for actions that allegedly occurred years before you ran for office and took office. And you said you're innocent of these charges and you plan to fight them in court. However, given that any trial likely wouldn't occur before next spring because of court backlogs, how can you assure voters that the looming trial won't be a distraction and cast a shadow over your first year in office?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. As I've stated publicly many times before, since I've been on council, I've passed over 60 pieces of legislation, many of which has been unanimously supported by my colleagues on council. Since I've been indicted, I've passed some of the most comprehensive pieces of legislation that has also been unanimously supported by my colleagues, which is the study for the creation of the Department of Public Safety and Wellness, the legislation that is currently with the Georgia State University for our $250 million workforce development bond. So I can ensure the residents of the city of Atlanta that not only am I innocent, but I have not allowed what has occurred in my personal life to impact my ability to lead while being on the Atlanta City Council and focusing on the needs of our residents, which I plan to do as I continue to move forward in this race while dealing with these matters. Thank you.
Councilman Dickens, this next question is for you. And it is about the Atlanta City Detention Center, which we know you and several of your fellow candidates are in favor of not closing the center. We understand this facility sits mostly empty. Most of the folks who are held there are nonviolent offenders, meaning these are not the folks that have been committing the crimes that have contributed to the spike over the past year. We know that the city initially started negotiations with Fulton County to consider using the center to help alleviate overcrowding at the county jail. It seems like those conversations are moving slowly. So given all of that, in addition to the fact that keeping the center open is costly to taxpayers, why should we keep it open?
Yeah, this is a good question because it's a complicated situation. One is COVID has made the Fulton County Jail, well, Fulton County Jail is always pretty full, but because of COVID, now it's a human rights situation where individuals are stacked on top of each other, too close to be able to be COVID safe. And so this begins to be a human rights concern. So they needed a relief valve. And we do have the Atlanta, the ACDC is underutilized to say the least. And so I was in favor of, for a temporary period, 6 months to 8 months, to alleviate this court backlog, to be able to relieve some pressure off of the Fulton County Jail, to be able to have individuals, something like 500 individuals housed at ACDC, the city's detention center, but not for a long-term solution. Fulton County will have to either build a larger jail or figure out how to get people through this court process quicker through more, through more DAs, ADAs, or through more court situations. But then we still need to reimagine what to do with ACDC. We still have to figure out how to help people that are experiencing homelessness, mental health, how to get people services that they need. What can we do with this large facility other than house people that have just experienced a behavioral issue or people that have committed a misdemeanor? What all can we do in there? It could be a mixed use facility. And so I was actually one of the legislators that looked at reimagining what to do with ACDC. And so I think that as we come out of COVID, we can figure that out.
Thank you. This next question is for Sharon Gay. As a private attorney, you and your practice have played an instrumental role in many large-scale developments in Atlanta, including Pont City Market, Atlantic Station. But given your close professional ties to the development industry, how can voters know that communities' voices and concerns will still be heard if you're elected mayor and that you're still committed to protecting neighborhoods against gentrification?
Because that's exactly the way I have approached the projects that I've worked on for all these years. I have worked with neighborhoods. The projects that I work on have gotten approved because I have worked extensively with the neighborhoods in question. But for Atlantic Station, we had several hundred community meetings on everything from the environmental issues to the new proposed bridge to the scope of the project itself. Pond City Market, I created a whole new way of working with the neighborhoods because the property was in one NPU in one neighborhood, but immediately adjacent to 3 others. And I worked with the city council members and the planning department to have a new way to approach how the city went about reviewing that project, to have a working group of 4 different NPU representatives, all 4 NPUs. They regularly went back and reported to their neighborhoods. And we worked with a committee to hammer out a set of proposed conditions that we then, for the zoning, that we then took back to each of the neighborhoods. And nobody had ever done anything like that before. Madison Yards, a project that's just recently been developed in Reynoldstown. Again, we put together a neighborhood working group, worked with them to design the project. The neighborhood even named the project and worked very closely with them, including when the State Department of Transportation wanted us to change the project in a way that undermined the pedestrian-friendly design. I work to get GDOT to change their mind so that we could actually implement the pedestrian and bike-friendly design that the neighborhood wanted. So I know in a very granular way how to work with communities.
Madam President, you have argued passionately against many of Mr. Reed's policies and plans during his 8 years as mayor. And as council president, you don't get to propose or vote on legislation. So would you kindly discuss how you would transition from that posture as council president to mayor, where your responsibility would be creating policies and plans and working with city council and other officials to push those actions through?
Well, the tenets of my service have been founded in 3 things: transparency, ethics, and accountability. And typically my no votes fell in those realms. 1, either they were not transparent interaction, they were not ethical, or I questioned the ethics of it, or I could not be held, or would I be held accountable for voting yes for something when there were issues resolving that. And so one of the things I have been as a council member and wanting to make sure that we have the right team work and connection with the executive branch. And so I will be a breath of fresh air to the council as mayor of our city, because I'm going to involve them and work with them. And they're not going to have to get up in the morning and read the AJC to find out what's going on inside of city government, because they're going to be at the table. I'm going to invite them maybe quarterly to a cabinet meeting so they can hear on the ground the issues that our city are facing. I will also be working with them on policy development, having them to also weigh in as we are doing our budgeting and letting them know where the issues are in city government. So I think the communications will be better. And certainly if council members have questions about any policy initiative that I have, I will be forthright with them I will provide the information with them so that when they make their vote, they can be held accountable for the votes that they made and be sure that they're doing it in the best interest of our great city.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. And our last individual question goes to former Mayor Reed. So you have argued that you are the best candidate in this race to address violent crime in the city, and you've emphasized your past experience in office while making that case. Even tonight, you spoke about your time as mayor. And while overall crime went down during your administration, an AJC analysis of crime data showed that shooting incidents actually went up from 2011 to 2017, and violent crime at the end of your term in 2017 was at a higher rate than it was in 2020. So given that, why should voters believe that you are in fact the best candidate to tackle that problem? And is there anything you would have done differently in regards to crime?
Because the bottom line is during my tenure, when we left, even according to the AJC, crime was the lowest it had been in 40 years. And off of that framework, Mayor Bottoms continued a forward progression of crime reduction. The reason that I'm the right person is because you're experiencing a crime spike of 58%. You're experiencing an officer reduction down to 1,340 officers, and 155 people were murdered. And the mayor that we need right now is a person that will be day one ready to know how to select a first-rate chief the way that I did with Chief Turner and Chief Shields, build morale among the police department, and get them on a forward foot regarding reducing crime. The other part of our approach that doesn't get much attention is the use of 33 recreation centers that we converted to centers of hope, where we had young people who were in those locations until 7 o'clock at night, 6 days a week. This resulted in a 25% reduction in teen crime. So the bottom line is if the reduction of crime had continued, I wouldn't be running for mayor because I did not plan on running for mayor. Hundreds of people called to ask me to run for mayor because our city is experiencing an increase in death. So there are 155 families that lost a loved one. And when I was mayor, we never lost more than 110 people to death.
Thank you, sir.
In the year that we did have that increase, we reduced it the very next year to less than 100.
Thank you, Mayor.
Candidates, each of you will have 1 minute to respond to questions during this final round. And the next question comes from our colleague, Lori Wilson at Channel 2 Action News. Let's go to the video.
Atlanta is becoming a tech hub. What ideas do you have about continuing to attract tech companies to our area? And then beyond the colleges and universities, how do you plan to make sure that Atlantans are trained and prepared to take those high-paying jobs?
So again, Ms. Wilson's question is pointing out the fact that Atlanta is becoming a technology hub. So starting with you, Councilman Brown, what will you do to continue to attract tech companies to our area? And this is a two-pronged question. In addition to knowing what you would do to attract more companies to Atlanta, what will you do beyond working with colleges and universities to prepare and train Atlanta residents for these high-paying jobs?
Well, for starters, I would meet with the corporations that are already existing in Atlanta that, are the ones creating a lot of these high-paid tech roles in which they're having a real difficulty filling right now. I believe that we need to expand our technical certification programs within Atlanta. I think we can do that through a partnership with Atlanta Technical Institute. And I believe we can better prepare our residents who may not go to college, but would be able to move into some career pathway around technology opportunities that would give them the ability to apply and succeed in these roles. The other thing is that, I believe that we need a spokesperson for the city of Atlanta outside of Invest Atlanta that understands the fundamentals of our city, that can go out and rebuild some of the relationships that have been broken in the past, to speak with these organizations to see how we can continue to show them we have the ability to sustain them in our city.
Thank you.
Councilman Dickens, same question.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I mean, this literally is right up my alley as someone who graduated from Georgia Tech and who spends his days every day at TechBridge as the Chief Development Officer, working with CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, Vice Presidents of technology. I work with them daily and the startup community. We are building something different in Atlanta, something better. We are the most diverse technology and entrepreneurship ecosystem in the country that offers opportunities for everyone. We have to continue to push that. And I've been at the forefront of doing that by training people that are low income or no income, training them how to get $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 jobs at some of Atlanta's biggest companies like Accenture, NCR. These folks did not hire people that didn't come from college until I showed them a better way through the technology career program at TechBridge that I started. But we also have the AUC, Georgia Tech, Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Emory. We have the ecosystem that's here, and we have to have a mayor that knows how to create and innovate and also recruit. You have to be at the
Thank
table.
you, Councilman.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gay, same question.
I'd call TechBridge. Now, we're at a unique moment because we have a diverse, well-educated workforce that our incredible colleges and universities are turning out that is unlike any other resource in the country. So that's why our companies are coming here. We need to take advantage of that, continue to make Atlanta a good place to invest. But at the same time, we need to make sure that more of our citizens can take advantage of those opportunities. The Metro Atlanta Chamber is doing a good job of recruiting and helping to build a workforce. I would be a very active partner with that, but also work with our technical schools to bring more people along into the jobs that are not just the ones that four-year college graduates can get, and really be intentional about focusing with the companies as they come here in recruiting some of those local residents and helping give them the training they need so that the jobs are available to a wider range of people. And then continue to use our economic incentives in a careful way to recruit the kind of companies that we really want to create the jobs of the future.
Thank you, Ms. Gay.
Madam President, same question.
Yes, if we train them, they will come. And so, I have, as president of City Council, embraced science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and got a group of young ladies in middle school from our more challenged communities and exposed them to careers in that field, and they have just exploded. And I believe when you give those inflection points of exposure to our youth, then we are starting to build that workforce that we will want to have. And so that's what we need to do, is make sure that we're partnering with our public schools, making sure our recreation centers are just beyond recreation, but also have opportunities for them to be engaged with them, because our youth will also attract them. And then we need to make sure we have the physical infrastructure here to be able to support the technology that is coming and that we want to come. And we need not to understand that they're not going to come if they're not going to be able to get the lighting, the internet cable, and the capabilities that they need to be able to do their trade here. So we need to do infrastructure and the children.
Thank you, ma'am. Former Mayor Reed, same question.
Give me the question again, please.
Yes, sir. So we understand that Atlanta is becoming a technology hub. So as mayor, what would you do to continue to attract tech companies to the area? And then in addition to that, what would you do aside from working with colleges and universities to make sure that Atlanta residents are being trained and prepared to take on and have opportunities to have these jobs?
Thank you for the question. We didn't just become a technology hub. We became a technology hub because my administration worked at it diligently, making multiple trips to Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, to learn the process for attracting technology companies. Between 2010 and 2018, we attracted 17 US and regional headquarters. We moved NCR, which used to be in Gwinnett County, into the city limits. And we launched the Engage Fund, which was the first time our Fortune 500 businesses put money into tech startups. So it didn't just happen. What we will do is to do what we did before on a larger scale with more partners, more aggressively. And on the training side, I would go to our leading Fortune 500 businesses, We have the third largest concentration of them. And I would have them stand up a training institute for technology, much along the line as we did with Engage.
Thank you, sir.
All right, our next question is a shorter one, and it's going to go to Councilman Dickens first. What's not being talked about enough in this race?
What's not being talked about enough in this race? Grocery stores on the south side so people can live a healthier life. Balanced economic growth, opportunities across the entire city. So I think what's not being talked about is all of Atlanta, a wholeness of Atlanta, that yes, we're talking about public safety, but we're talking about public health. I haven't had one COVID question in 17 different forums. So we, you know, if someone's beating the drum of public safety, we have to talk about public health. That's about public safety as well, and healthy food options where people live in a food desert, and a relationship with our Atlanta public school system. So the city as a full city, not just crime, not just one or two things here and there, but all of the things that you have to manage the competing interests of to be able to lead the city forward. We have to talk about everything.
Thank you. Ms. Gay.
I think it's too simplistic a focus on crime and not understanding how crime relates to the health of our city and the health of our neighborhoods. And the crime, we get asked questions about crime all the time, not just you guys, but about everybody. But it's all focused on policing and money and strategy and people. And what really, and I talk about this all the time, and some of the rest of us do too, but I really don't hear much conversation about how you need strategies around preventing crime. You know, nobody raises their hand in kindergarten and says, I'd like to be a carjacker. You know, criminals are made out of lack of opportunity, unhealthy neighborhoods, toxic stress in their neighborhoods, unhealthy schools. And that absolutely has to be understood, addressed, if we want to be the city we have always thought we were.
Thank you. Council President Moore.
Yes, I believe the state of our departments that are dysfunctional need to be worked on, and the workforce that really need to be uplifted. They do an incredible job with the lack of resources and bad facilities and equipment to serve the citizens of the city, and I don't think that we've done well by them. I think transit is not being talked about here, making and fulfilling the promise to put transit around our belt line so that we can connect all of the communities in the city and hopefully get us out of a car-centric culture in this community. And then infrastructure above ground and below ground that is crumbling and needs some desperate investment. Those are the three things that I think we need to have more conversations about, because they are the fundamental foundation of this great city.
Mr. Reed, what's not being talked about enough?
Poor people. I think that people are hurting much more than we see or talk about. I think that Black people, for example, lost 2.7 years in life expectancy as a result of COVID. And we don't spend enough time talking about what we're going to do to stop this tragedy. I plan on launching an Office of Anti-Displacement, just a place where people that don't have resources, can't hire folks, don't have a champion, will have a champion again. So when somebody calls a grandmother to try to lowball them to buy their house, they need a champion. When somebody's about to be evicted from an apartment and they're just trying to make it, they need a champion. So I want the city to stand up for folks. And I also think that we need to be talking about the basics of repaving streets and filling potholes, but more than filling potholes, completely repaving streets and giving folks a much better citizen experience.
Thank you. And Councilman Brown, what's not being talked about enough in this race?
Well, I just want to preface this by saying I think I've been talking a hell of a lot about generational poverty and Black poor people in this city. I think to the point where folks are probably sick of me talking about it. But what I would like to hear being talked about, I've been on council for 2 years and I've been able to do some incredible work on council. But a lot of the folks that are running for public office and for the office of mayor, they've been in positions for very long times, or they've been involved in city government for a period of time. I would want to understand, why are we still addressing some of these things? Why are there still barriers in place keeping some of the things we're talking about we want to do from happening? And why hasn't it already been done? I think these are that is a very important conversation to understand, and really get an understanding from the candidates in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from reader Edward Dobmeyer, and it's about the city's response to coronavirus. So Councilman Dickens, you said you hadn't gotten a COVID question. Here's one. If elected mayor, would you require all city employees and or contractors to either be vaccinated or face regular COVID testing? And we'll start with Ms. Gay.
Yes. I'm doing this in my own private business. We are at a point where vaccines keep everyone safe, not just the person who gets the vaccination, but the people around them who perhaps don't have it, can't have it, or too young to have it. And it reduces the spread and reduces the risk of serious illness if someone contracts COVID. I think we have to model good behavior. Certainly those in leadership need to model good behavior, but I think we do need to, as a matter of policy, require public employees, people who are facing the public, to be vaccinated by a certain period of time, or, as you said, face regular testing.
Council President Moore.
The answer to that question is yes. I mean, we are a public entity and we're going to be interacting with each other and other members of the public. Also, the other mitigating measures, like making sure you're wearing your mask and social distancing, particularly when you're indoors. And there may be a time when we may have to go further, but if you are not vaccinated, you definitely need to be tested on a quite frequent basis, because many of our employees work in small areas with each other, and they need to know that they're safe because they have to go home to their families as well. So yes.
Mr. Reed.
We would absolutely mandate vaccinations for our workforce. And for those who did not want to participate in that effort, they would have to be tested weekly. And I also think that you should use the persuasive quality of the mayor's office to really galvanize other leaders across the region. Once you're demonstrating this kind of behavior, you typically have relationships with other political leaders across jurisdictions. So not only do we not need to do it for the 8,500 to 9,000 folks that we have direct impact on, as well as the contractors, but I also think that we need to reach out to terrific leaders like Michael Thurman, who I think is doing a first-rate job in DeKalb, and Chairman Rob Pitts, who I think is doing a first-rate job in Fulton, to leaders across the region. Because as I said, we lost a year of life expectancy for all people last year. We lost 2.7 years of life expectancy for Black people.
Councilman Brown, would you require COVID vaccines or regular testing?
Sorry. So I would not require that the workforce is vaccinated. I would give them the choice to either be vaccinated or not. And if they choose not to be vaccinated, of course, we would conduct biweekly testing within the city workforce. But I also think that we would make sure we're working to educate and inform the workforce and the city about COVID and the vaccine, because I think there's a lot of miscommunication, misinformation, miseducation around the vaccine that has deterred a lot of people from wanting to be vaccinated. And I would ensure that we have a helpline in place that could help solve some of those concerns within the city of Atlanta.
Thank you. And Councilman Dickens.
Yes, repeat the actual question. Was it for the city as a whole or just city employees?
It was city employees. So if elected mayor, would you require all city employees or contractors to be either vaccinated or face regular COVID testing?
Yeah, so because right now we have a worker shortage, I want to get to 100% vaccination, but I have to do that in an organized fashion because we have a service delivery problem right now. So I would say within the first 100 days, I'd like to get us to 100% vaccination. And I'd like to do that by using carrots instead of sticks. You develop incentives that allow them to be paid to get vaccination. And that's the incentive to help them be able to decide to get this vaccination right away. And then we'll use the reserve fund to pay those individuals for getting vaccinated. But yeah, and then later, if they don't want to get vaccinated, we'll have to use penalties in order to curb to get them in line to be able to be vaccinated. But I know that right now, we have worker shortages in various departments that are customer facing, and the public is already behind on some of these service delivery objectives that we have, the service level agreements related to garbage pickup, yard trimmings and potholes. So I want to get us back there within 100 days of my administration. I think we can do that with carrots instead of sticks, and they will be able to get there.
Okay, candidates, this next question is in regards to the phrase called the Atlanta Way, which I'm sure you know is used to describe the relationship between the Black and white business and political classes and their ability to advance the city in business and in racial matters. Does the Atlanta Way still exist today? And if so, what does it look like to you in a city where so many people feel like they're being left out of the equation? They don't have a seat at the table. So Council President Moore, please, you first.
Well, the Atlanta Way has to become everyone's way, and it needs to be with a larger table, inclusive of more people. And it's not just about race in Atlanta, it also has to be about class and economic status. And we have to open that table up to more people and have more conversation. We also need a leader that can unify the city and bring this city together. And that's why I'm uniquely qualified to be the mayor of the city of Atlanta, is that I have represented for 20 years areas that are economically, racially, culturally, even a large Latino population. We always talk in Black and white, but there are other ethnicities that are here in our city of Atlanta. And I have worked with them and built bridges with them and served them and found as they find that all the issues that we have in this city, everyone shares the same issues. So yes, the Atlanta Way can exist, but it needs to be the 2.0 where we're increasing who is at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Former Mayor Reed, same question.
My predecessor, Mayor Ivan Allen, believed in the Atlanta Way and was the first to think of that in those terms. And for generations since, we've all benefited because of it. I think the view of the Atlanta Way has to be much more broad. It has to include LGBTQ people. It has to include Hispanic people in order to be improving in a positive and bold way. I think it's at risk right now, not because of our unity or our feeling for one another. It's a risk because we've had an explosion in crime and violence that's ripping our city apart, where people disagree on the approaches, and it's making it very hard for us to have important conversations. It's also hurting our national and our international reputation. And so the most important thing we can do for the Atlanta Way is to push back against this surge of murder and violence in our city so we can have some sense of normalcy again.
Thank you.
Councilman Brown, same question.
Yeah, I believe the Atlanta Way is not working, and it hasn't been working for a very long time, just as well as this narrative around Atlanta being a Black Mecca or a city too busy to hate. And, unfortunately, I think before the Atlanta Way was a system where the residents of this city would, ask to be a part of conversations and beg and plead with their elected officials to hear them and so that they can feel heard. And I think it needs to shift. At the end of the day, the people are the table, and our elected officials, including my office as mayor, is going to be invited to take a seat. and have a conversation and work with the community to ensure that no resident ever has to be left behind again, because we cannot be a Black Mecca when you have Black poor people struggling to survive every day in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Dickens.
The Atlanta way worked for a while, and we need to improve upon it just like any other system. When Brad Smith, the president of Microsoft, came to Atlanta in a small group session, they pitched the idea of what they wanted to do as this hub for Microsoft. I said then, as I've said to Airbnb and others, it's not just important that you build buildings in Atlanta. I care about how many Atlantans are going to work in your building. How many of them are going to design it, contractors? How many of them are going to have great jobs in your building? I don't need you to import talent into Atlanta. We have untapped talent here. On that very same street, Donnelly Hollowell, there was a ribbon cutting for a big event. For something new that $1 million was donated. And they had barbecue from an organization that's way in Lawrenceville to deliver barbecue on Donnelly Hollowell, where there's 4 barbecue restaurants. It's disrespectful to Atlanta when we say there's an Atlanta way, but we always seem to find ourselves supporting outside groups and not supporting our own. Poor people want us to help them out, and they want us to take them seriously right now and support them.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Gay, same question.
Over the years of our history, the Atlanta way has been essential in moving Atlanta forward rather than backward, and making Atlanta and therefore Georgia really the capital of the New South, not the veneration of the past. But it is not sufficient for where we are today. It is not sufficient because of what has happened in our country, what has happened in our city as a result of racial protests over police injustices, over social justice issues. We need a broader table and need seats at the table for the people who haven't been asked to participate. Maynard Jackson once said, the problem is not with the good guys, with the bad guys, is that the good guys have gone to sleep. And too many of our good guys are asleep right now because they're not being asked to participate in planning the future of our city. They're not being asked to participate in planning their own neighborhoods. Too much of our decision-making has been top down, however well-meaning that might be. And we need to broaden the seats at the table and have a truly inclusive Atlanta.
Thank you. All right, that was the last question of the night. And now we're going to turn to closing statements. So each candidate will have 1 minute to give a closing statement. We're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. So Mr. Reed, you are up first.
For 8 years, I had the pleasure of serving as your mayor. And during that time, we reduced crime to the lowest level it had been in 40 years. We built the police force to 2,000 officers, and our economy boomed in a way that it has not in the last 40 years. 71,400 people moved into Atlanta. Emory University and the CDC raised their hand. They moved into Atlanta. The East Lake Country Club raised its hand and moved into Atlanta. Now, because of crime and violence and murder, 20% of our population wants to leave our city. They want to secede. Give me an opportunity to serve as your mayor, and I guarantee you that I understand the assignment. We will build a first-rate police force. We will focus on our young people, and we will turn this tide of crime and violence around. Thank you.
Council President Moore.
Hello, everyone. I want to be our next mayor. We know that we have challenges with public safety, and I want to make sure that every neighborhood in our city is safe, no matter where you live, or your zip code or your income bracket. I also want to make sure that you get the city services that you deserve and really focus on doing the basic services that we are entrusted to do on your behalf. I want to make sure that we're transparent in our interactions and what we do, so you know how your money is being spent, that it's being spent wisely and not being abused as it has been. We're going to do it ethically. I have served with integrity, and I will continue to serve with integrity as your next mayor. And I want to be accountable to you, the people we serve. And I also want to make sure that people in city government are held accountable for not violating our charter and our code. Please join our team. Check out my website for my crime platform on FeliciaMooreForMayor.com. Atlanta deserves more. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gay, your closing statement.
Wasn't following the alphabet very well, was it? Where are you? Anyway, thank you for those who joined tonight, and for those for whom Facebook was not working. Hopefully you will see it later. I'm running to be Atlanta's next mayor because I want to bring a fresh approach. I think we're at a crisis point in the city with regard to crime, with regard to services, and with regard to the long-term neglect of what has been happening in the city for too many years. And I haven't been in city government as an elected official. I'm not tied to the processes of the past or the mistakes of the past or the ways things have been done before. What I bring is years of service as a servant leader. That is the model that I would bring to being the mayor of the city. I have been involved in the civic and charitable life of our city for decades. I've worked with our neighborhoods and businesses and government to bring people together, to solve problems, to create new places, to create new opportunity. I have a passion for public service, and I would bring that to being the mayor that Atlanta needs right now.
Thank you. Councilman Dickens.
Yeah, thank you all for this opportunity today. This election to me is about the future and the soul of Atlanta. Are we gonna move forward in peace, productivity, prosperity for all? Or are we gonna go backwards into despair, destruction, and corruption? So here's the future that I see. I see 20,000 units of affordable housing being built or preserved in 8 years so people can live in the city of Atlanta. We will make investments in the Beltline, the infrastructure of our city, Campbellton Road. We'll have bike lanes and sidewalks so people can get not only where they're going each day, but where they want to go in life. This wave of crime will be stopped with my Safe Streets Atlanta plan, and we'll make sure that we work together with our Atlanta public school system so that we can thrive, so kids can go on to have a productive life. I see a future where good jobs just don't go to friends and those that are connected or to people that live from out of state, but they go to people right here. I'm an engineer. I know how to run things. I will run the city well in like a world-class organization, but I'll make sure it runs well for everyone with integrity you can trust.
All right. And lastly, Councilman Brown. You're on mute. Last of the night.
Sorry. I'm running to be the 61st mayor of Atlanta, the first LGBTQ mayor of Atlanta, and make history as the second youngest mayor in the history of this city. Generational poverty, mass gentrification, and a lack of affordable housing, they're destabilizing our city. And it's leading to record unemployment, it's leading to homelessness and a continuum of crime. And I think as a city, we cannot continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting something different to happen. We are living in perilous times, and we are standing on the precipice of Atlanta being this great international city or becoming a city that we do not recognize. My mission as mayor is to create an inclusive and thriving ecosystem that provides access to quality jobs, affordable housing, and empowers safe communities so that no Atlantan is ever left behind again. Thank you for this opportunity today to the AJC.
Thank you, sir. And the AJC would like to thank all of our candidates for participating in this evening's forum. We all know that choosing Atlanta's next mayor is the most important decision that voters can make next month. We hope that this conversation has given you all an opportunity to help answer some of those questions. In addition, if you have any questions or about our coverage, or if you'd like to provide any feedback about our reporting, please reach out to JD and I at AtlantaMayorsRace@ajc.com. Again, the AJC would also like to thank our AJC subscribers. All of y'all make events like this one possible. Until our next community conversation, thank you again for your support, and please continue to follow the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for the most up-to-date coverage of Atlanta's 2021 elections. Good night.
Good night.
6:30 on the dot. You guys are good.